Thank you.
Oko kamatape mo ofat ka mo tol ko to. O lak fafeta ki tamai he vani. Tine omi whainga maari ko ni ki tau whakataha i te he sum o ka koe na pe ko starate Luisa. Ko si kore atu ke tupe mua ke whai whanki tala noa ko mo mātua a mo whankui. Ke lele pe ke osi. Pai whakamui mui aki e tau kuia matai. Ko e whakaosi e pato ke whai mai lewa ai whehui. Ke kuhange koe lau, koe mālo pe ke ngau ngau e. He koe ata mai au kai ke fuku pasete te ao. Ka e whakamālo at pa kosi ofa at ka mo tolko toa pe. Eu kamata leva he taimi. My name is Pauline Mataele George. I'm the oldest granddaughter of Pauline Maungaloa Mataele and Siosaia Mataele Hamea. My mother is Elisi Laisan Tupotanea Mataele Fonua, second daughter of Pauline and Mataele. My father is Sione Fonua, son of Siosaia and Anna Vake Fonua from there. I'm the oldest of 6 children. My siblings are Osikena Vesinia Nauli Uri Fonua, E Mosi Fang Po Taungahi Hifo Fonua, Arthur Wallace Lotolua Fonua, Sione Muriki Ha Ano Fonua, Motevita Mapatau Tai Fonua. I was born and raised in Tonga and grew up living between Apele Koula, Pea, Yofo, Nyototapu, and Mavao because of my father's job. From the age of 14, my parents sent me to New Zealand, 1956, for schooling, and I have remained living in New Zealand since then. Of my siblings, 4 of us older ones, including myself, were born at Apele Koula. Our younger 2 siblings were born in Mamau in New Zealand. I currently live in New Zealand with my 3 daughters, Veronica, Rebecca, and Tuialaival. The memories I'm sharing with you all today will be from my childhood at the age of 7, living at Apele Koula, and through the years with memories of my mother's siblings and their strong bond and relationship. My last memories that I'll be sharing with you will be of our precious grandfather, Siosaia Mataele Hamea Mafleo. I will save the best for the last. Now, Uncle Maile Mataele. My father always referred to Maile and his family as the first family of the Mataele Hako. They had the best food in town. Uncle Maile and Auntie Valu were the best home cooked maid cooks to us. Maile cooked all sorts of teriyaki dishes, etc. And Auntie Valu baked beautiful fruit cakes and scones. As children, Auntie Lavi and I loved watching Uncle Maile carving pumpkins for Halloween and decorating the Christmas tree beautifully. The first Christmas tree I've ever seen in Tonga was at their place. Uncle Maile always visited our Belikola with Auntie Kaffa's kids, young Robbie and Ray. I always thought that those two were his grandkids. I also thought Ram, another guy, was Smiley's son, not realizing that he's one of Grandma Tripolotu's family. When my father was working in customs at Vuna Wharf, he often saw Uncle Miley taking tourists around in a car. Dad told me, your Uncle Miley was the ideal man for this kind of job because he spoke perfect English and had a lot of local knowledge. In 1979, I had the honor to see Uncle Miley in New Zealand. I just gave birth to my third and the last daughter. My husband Ray already named our daughter Tuia after my mother-in-law, but Uncle Miley wanted to name her after Auntie Bahalaibat. I begged Uncle to give me another name because Halaibalu is a Ho'eiki name. Ke o mai akau me fo i ke whakahingoa. He said, he's the boss because Auntie Balu is his wife and no one will tell him otherwise. And besides, we have a lot of women named Halaibalu from King Mumui's line. So my youngest daughter is named Tuia Itera Kaalipo Iteau Halaibalu Whanonga Vainga George. In 1984, Auntie Balu came here to New Zealand and visited us at our home. Tuia was 4 years old and got to meet and greet and eat with her beloved granny. Auntie Balu fed my daughter instead of herself with homestead chicken and shared wonderful stories with our family. She also played a piano while we sang along with her. Tuya loved her granny and always thought she was a special lady who was loving and kind. Before she passed, she sent me a few photos of my parents that they had. To this day, the Mailehako and the Lolo tribe, especially my sister Desa, only call my daughter Laibalo instead of Tuia. In 1987, I saw Uncle Maile for the first time in many years for Aleki and Diana's wedding, Whakanofumotua Puaka, and Mataele family reunion. I had the greatest honor spending time with my beloved auntie and uncle. They came every day to see us at lunchtime and would stay till 3 or 4 in the morning. Auntie Lavi and I were given a whole hut for our own use at Kahana Resort during that time. My uncle Maile told us many priceless stories. Most of it was about my mother growing up. I remember one night Auntie Valu fell asleep and I was ready to sleep. But Uncle Maile was wide awake and didn't want to leave yet. He claimed that he was there to look after us. I'm going to add this. Poor Auntie Lavi couldn't sleep because she said she can't lie down because of him being there. Uncle Miley bought black coral necklaces as gifts for my 3 young girls and raved about how they were the newest thing. He also gave 200 USA dollar. I wouldn't take it from him because Joe and Carl already gave me money. He insisted on me taking it to buy lollies for the kids. because he got lots of money in the bank. I wouldn't take it from him. Uncle Miley and Auntie Balu were knowledgeable, well read about the world and knew a lot about Tongan protocol. I always enjoy listening to both of them, educate me on family history about the Mataele family. One of the last times I saw Uncle Miley was in 1919 Tonga for his 90th birthday. We gave him a fruit cake, birthday cake in the shape of a number 90 with frangipani with my children's name on it. He loved the cake and was so happy this cake came all the way from New Zealand just for him, just for him. I'll always remember Uncle Miley as having a strong love for the gospel. He loved his family very much. He was very well respected, loving and kind with a wealth of knowledge. Uncle Lolo Manaya Mataele. I often saw Uncle Lolo at Apele Koula, and he would always call me Line. Sometime he would come and spend time talking to my mom or Uncle Chief. That's Lolomai. One day, uh, a year before I left Tonga in 1955, Auntie Lavi, myself, and our friend Tupo were having an Akohiva singing practice. All of a sudden, we heard Uncle Olo cursing and shouting angrily. We all ran to see what was happening and saw him between Apele Koula and Thomas Hansen's place. He said, O kumolo to kovi hok tu fefine, na awe pehe e mauta mai ke aro ako, na ikai more hapanga hata. He said that they were jealous of his sister and his father's, but the father sent her to school and no one spent any money. He didn't mention any name, and Auntie Lavi wanted to go and calm him down because he was so upset, but decided at the last minute not to. We never found out who he was speaking to, but we knew it had something to do with Auntie Faye. She was the only sibling overseas for school at that time. Years later, when I was a teen at Liahona College in Tonga, I had the chance to go to Fowey for the first time. I got to meet Grandma Lorohea and baby Eleanor. I met his daughter, who was around 1 or 2 at the time. From my memory, Grand Lorohea was beautiful, petite, gentle lady who called me Pauline George. To me, the closest person who resembles her is Fehiha Meti's daughter. That's my opinion. When I moved to New Zealand, excuse me, I got to meet Uncle Loro and Auntie May, Mafileo Suliana and Desa when they came to the temple in New Zealand around 1960 or 1961. I could be wrong. They stayed 2 streets away from me. I was on my own at the time because I was waiting for my family to join me from Tonga. Before their arrival, I had received a letter from my mother telling me they were coming and to go and see them. I was so embarrassed because I didn't have anything to take. I only got an allowance from my parents once a month. I went to see them and was talking with Daisy in the backyard when Auntie May called me. She said, Uncle Lolo wants you to come. They were surprised to see me, and I was surprised and thrilled to see them. Uncle Lolo disappeared to the room and came back with his tangay paang money bag, just like Grandpa Mataele. He handed me a lot of dollar bills and said, Alu Kailole, the same words most of my mom's brothers always said to me whenever they gave me money. When my parents finally came to New Zealand, I told Mom all about Uncle Lolo and his tangay paanga. My mom, my mind went back to Apele Koula and Grandpa with his money bag. I told Mom I was so surprised that he had so much money. But Mom said that's not unusual because her older brother Lolo was a hard-working, humble, honest, and he had a lot of business and saved a lot. He would often commute back and forth from Tonga to Fiji, Samoa, and other places. The last I had heard of my beloved uncle was the day he passed. My mom and dad were listening to the Tongan radio station after our dinner. All of a sudden, we heard mom wailing and crying loud from their bedroom. We thought dad had a heart attack because he was sickly. My sibling and I ran downstairs to see what was going on. Our father came to the door and waved at us to go. He came out later to break the news to us that Uncle Lolo had passed away. My poor mother mourned by herself for Uncle Lolo, for her brother. She said that she felt so alone because none of her siblings were there to share the grief with her. At that time, it was very hard for anyone to come from Tonga to New Zealand due to the Tongan government's rule. I always remember my Uncle Lolo as a loving man, family man, a man of God who loved the gospel with strong business ethics and a big kind heart who gave to everyone. Uncle Noke, Inoke Mataele. My mom told me that when I was a year old, during the time of the World War II, her and uncle had their own little business in town. At the same time, Americans and Kiwis were in Tonga, and the island often had alarms signaling incoming air raids. The alarms would prompt people to hide. One day in Hateo, the alarm went and everyone ran and hid. Once the alarm stopped, everyone came out of the hiding place, and my mother panicked because no one could find me or Uncle Noke. All of a sudden, Inoke came out of an outside loo toilet, holding me tightly in his arms because he hid us there for safety during the alarm. Everyone was so relieved at the same time, laughing that he chose to hide me in the toilet of all places. I never knew it then, but he saved my life that day and privatized my safety. I also remember Uncle Noke between 1947 and 1949 at Apele Koula, where he often came to sell his fruit. One day he arrived with a couple of baskets of oranges and some green coconuts. Auntie Lavi, me, and Uncle Vic ran to meet up with him at the veranda. We all had our own little money, but as soon as we appeared, Inoke, uh, Inoke gave us 2 oranges each. We took off and never gave him the money. We ran to the back of the house and ate our oranges there. Auntie Lavi wanted another orange, so she went back and got some from Uncle Noke. And Uncle Vic and I stayed where we were, and Uncle wasn't aware that Lavi went back and took another orange. That night, the three of us were summoned by Grandpa Mataele to his room. Grandpa asked us so many questions, especially to Lavi. Did you pay your brother Enoch? Did you buy any oranges? He said, Lavi, listen to me. Lavi and Vic, you know Enoch is your older brother. And Pauline, you know Enoch is your mother's older brother. He was so kind to give you oranges for free. What have you done with the money you were supposed to give him? He always give you free food. So next time, make sure to treat him with respect and pay him if you want more of his fruit. He works hard being a missionary and does the Lord's work. And then he said, you have to buy from him to be fair. Ke mau se ane mo o I pe mau ha mo ya mo to. Grandpa was very upset and said we embarrassed him by doing what we did. Grandpa also said, if you kids need money, then just ask. We were lucky to have access to money at an early age. A few weeks later, Enoch came back with some fruit. The three of us waited for him, and as usual, uh,
He gave us a coconut each.
he gave us a coconut each for free. We all bought an extra one and paid. A few months later, Uncle Enoch came to Apele Koula and had a warm welcome from Grandpa. That particular morning, after 20 minutes or so, while I took Grandpa's hot milk for his breakfast, I heard Grandpa scolding Uncle Noke. Alu o malanga ki hata, oa te ke malanga mai ki ao. Both Uncle Noke and I just missed Grandpa's scolding hot milk because he threw it in anger. I never saw Uncle Noke again, except briefly while I was attending Liahona College when they used to have a church conference there. I later saw him again in 1967 when he came with his wife, uh, Auntie Tufui, to the temple in New Zealand. They stayed with us when my parents were still alive at the time. They spent a week with us before returning to Tonga. We had a little farewell party for them and I did all the cooking because my dad thought I cooked better than my mom. I prepared all the food on the table, but got a shock when I saw Uncle Hameti and Mum open a tin of corned beef and start eating it with the bread. Ignoring the food I prepared, I went and told my dad how I set the table nicely and that Mum and Dad and Uncle Ham couldn't wait to eat. My father told me, listen, Pauline, when I came to your mum's house for the first time, I grew up in a humble place and we always ate together as a family. At Apele Koula, when it was time for dinner, when it was dinner time, the table would be filled with lots of foods. One of your mom's siblings would walk out, followed by another sibling who would have a look and walk away, and they all would end up at grandpa's shop getting what they want to eat. That's just how the Mataele are. My siblings and I took off to bed after dinner. Uncle Inoke, Uncle Hamedi, and Auntie Tufui and my parents stayed up all night talking. Around 3 in the morning, we all woke to the sound of piano playing. I dashed downstairs to see who was playing beautifully at that time of the morning. It was Uncle Inoke. Mom and her Uncle Hameti were tap dancing, and my other siblings joined in. Uncle Inoke was so talented, he played like a jazz pianist. Uncle Hameti had a turn playing piano. He had a different style to Uncle Enoch. And when my mom played the piano, she too had a different style. The sibling was so happy being together, and I will never forget this night. As they say, it was a night to remember. My father and us kids were so happy to hear and witness the music produced from the three Mataele siblings. My father bought the piano when they arrived from Tonga 9 years prior. Mom never touched it once until her brothers came over. When they left, my mom cried the most because of her two older brothers. I guess she knew she never see them again. The last time I saw Uncle Enoch, it was just after Auntie May's uh, birthday in Hawaii. Carlo, Dottie, and Desa wanted me to go to the mainland to meet the wider Hakomataele. Grandma Alice Tripolotu and I flew to the USA and got picked up by Auntie Voka and Uncle Longolongo from the airport. In the evening of that same day, Uncle Lucky arrived at Grandma Pulotu's place with the news that Uncle Noke is not talking anymore and may go at any time. The next morning, Auntie Lavi arrived from Arizona. Grandma Pulotu told her about the news, so we decided that we have to leave to Pomona straight away. When we arrived, Auntie Tufui started telling us that Nook is not doing well and not talking. She encouraged us to go and see him straight away, especially Lavi and myself. I remember seeing Rosalina there and some other family. Auntie Lavi pushed me to go first and be lucky with him. When I went to see him, I said, Uncle Inoke, ko Pauline au atopo. Straight away, he said to me, Pauline, ikai ngalo iau. O mo mai mo kena o mai homo peipe ke ti. O tala mai ka mau ke au ke almo ia ke aia ka foi mai tom. Auntie Lavi and I cried our eyes out that he could remember that, even when we were told that he wasn't talking. The next day, Lavi, Lucy, and I flew back to Arizona to get ready in case something happens. I flew back to New Zealand 4 days later, and a few weeks later, I received the sad news from Auntie Lavi that Uncle Enoch had passed away. It was so sad, and I was grateful and thankful to our Heavenly Father for the chance that I had of seeing him before he passed. He was a very spiritual man, kind, loving family man, and a hard-working businessman himself. Uncle Apele Mataele. Of all my mom's siblings, I knew Uncle Ham better than any other uncle. He was residing at Apele Koula during the time we were there. After we came back from New Fall, when our family moved to Vavao in 1951, he was the first uncle that came and stayed with us for a few months. The second time around, he came back to stay with us in 1954. I could be wrong with the timing. He stayed with us for a while, then left to go to Tonga. When my parents moved to Hawaii, he joined them again. But this time he met my father's first cousin, Celia Bucket, and got married. 1960, my parents moved to New Zealand. It wasn't until 1975 that I saw him again in New Zealand. I had my firstborn daughter, Veronica. He came with a four-poster bed for her with turtle shells bracelet and other gifts. He used to spoil me too when I was young. My father got on with him very well and all of Mum's other siblings. Mum and Uncle Hameti were like twins. They went to school together, traveled with their school to other places, and sometimes performed step dancing and singing together. They often talk about how they used to treat customers when they were young. Uncle Hameti would tell off customers for coming too early, but would be just nice and never snub them. He spends a lot of time in New Zealand and lived with Laufildonga for some time. He would spend most of his time at our house when my children were very young. It was just like when my parents were still alive. He would come early and leave the next morning. He often told me I reminded him a lot of my mother as I got older. He asked me to name his youngest daughter when she was born. I named her after my mom, which made him very happy. He told me that's what he was wishing for. I remember in 1989, Uncle Ham, Seppi, myself, and Auntie Lavi and Benny went to Vegas for the trip so they could show me around. Auntie Celia had banned him from going to Vegas, but she said he used me as an excuse to go back. Everyone ran out of money except him and Penny. Auntie Lavi kept telling them, especially Penny, Pauline wants some money, and he would give money for me for gambling. When it was time to go back to LA, everyone had run out of money, not knowing that Uncle Hamid had luck, but never said anything. I got a shock when he handed me $400 US dollars. The usual words he would say to me. Es algo come aquí en la voice of Galicia Fanau Mokoe. It reminded me of all the boats I heard from all my uncles telling me to go buy lollies. I know they all did this because of the love for my mom. He always put my mom on the pedestal and never ever said a bad thing to her or about her. I saw Uncle Hamidi so many times in America, Hawaii, for Auntie
Mm.
May's last two birthdays in Hawaii. It's, before Auntie May's uh, sadly passed away. I saw him again in Hawaii when Mafileo sadly passed away. Again in attended his 80th birthday in San Francisco, and the last time at our family reunion in Tonga 2006 with my children. My children were surprised at how well spoken he was. They thought that he was American born. I told them that all their grandmother's siblings, including their own grandmother, had an American accent. This is because they were taught English at the early age by the Americans. Mm. Grandpa Mataele wanted all his children to be fluent in English and not just Tongan. I was devastated when I heard he passed away. I didn't have the chance to say goodbye and to tell him that I love him very much. I will always remember him as the kind, fun loving uncle and family man who made the time for us and spent hours talking with my parents about everything. He was close to my mother, got on well with my father, and was very knowledgeable. He loved the gospel, he loved his family, and he was very talented musically as well as businessman. Wilson, Uncle Wilson Falaloroma Mataele. Uncle Chief had his own shop. Auntie Lavi, Uncle Vic, and I would often work there as children, would be paid to mind the shop if he had to go out. He went out a lot to play pool at Sionehalevete's residence. He had lots of friends and followers. The only one that I remember was poor Felix Saloon. He was married to Norma, Auntie May's niece. Uncle Laloma had two rooms plus the storeroom next to him. One room was filled with books like a library. The first I saw Reader Digest books. Then he had his own bedroom. The storeroom was on the side next to the Glomatangi residence. I used to be scared of him, but he always lea whakaheke and called me by my full name, Pauline Tokilo. You have to clean my room and I will give you big money. Keke koroa ia ai. I found him interesting as he could type shorthand Morse code as a former radiographer and could play classical piano. He had a good command of English. I remember one time this American came to Apele Koula and we were told that he was from the Truman administration. He was in Tonga to write an autobiography on Grandpa Mataele. I remember the whole Mataele Hako had a big picnic at Sopu Beach. For some reason, I remember Manu and Afa being there as newlyweds at the time. Many a time I wanted to ask one of them if they remember this event. I don't know what happened to the proposed book as this occurred before the first fire at Apele Koula. Uncle Chief's shop, Uncle Chief store sold American cigarette. I'm saying chief because we know Loloma is chief. Sold American cigarettes, Astoria, Lucky Strike, etc., and alcohol. I first tried smoking Astoria as a child here. My uncle found out but never said anything. After my first puff of cigarette, I thought I was suffocating and coughed my lungs out. I was seven at the time. So you didn't put that. That was my first time smoking cigarette until several years later. Uncle Loloma Chief also had other things in his store, similar to Grandpa Mataele's. The only difference was Grandpa didn't sell cigarettes, only rolled tobacco, which was sold off the counter. Uncle Loloma always referred to me as Wisa Pauline George. When my little brother Fangpo was born, weighed 13 pounds at birth, and was a junkie and big baby, Uncle loved to carry him around and show him off. My parents never gave it a second thought because to them he was proud of his baby nephew. He would put my brother on the bed to sleep. We'd take some photo, but we lost it. I was told he spoiled him because he thought my brother looked like him. Uncle Chief always loved to talk about politics and smoke big fat cigars. I have never ever seen him in a Malatu pen. He would sometimes wear shirt, trousers, and necktie, sometimes a three-piece suit. I think his life changed after the fire at Apele Koula. A lot of people sling off about him, including family, but it was an unfortunate incident. And in life, one day you have it all, and the next day it's gone. One day you cook hekuro koula, and the next hengesi kapa. That's life. And Uncle Loma just got on with it as though nothing happened. Ever since I left Tonga as a teenager, I never received a letter from Uncle Chief. Years later, after my parents passed on, we moved to another area. I was surprised when one of our neighbors, the late Lata Viglani, my childhood friend in Tonga, now living in New Zealand in our area, came home one day. She handed me a handwritten letter, which mistakenly ended up and my dad's cousins, Yonifanua's residence, as no one knew where we moved to. The letter was addressed to my dearest niece, Wisa Pauline George. I looked at the bottom of the letter and saw that it came from him. I started wailing and crying without reading the contents of the letter because I never received any letters from him. I knew it had to be important. In the letter, Uncle Chief wrote asking if I'll be kind enough to send him a few dollars, whatever is left over from my expenses. Not caring how much, he said, I'm not how I used to be, and that he was not well. He said he had no right to ask me this, but he needed the help. He wrote that this may be the last time I hear from him, and he apologized for asking. One of my cousins was heading to Tonga, so I put money in an envelope from all of us, and she took it to Uncle Chief. When she got back, she told me that Uncle cried after receiving the envelope and expressed his gratitude. For me, I was honored that he asked me for help because this was one of my uncles that spoiled me as a child with money. I learned about money through him and my other uncles and grandpa. This is one man that I owe because all the love he poured into me was because of my mom and because I was named after their mother, my grandmother. Uncle Chief was talented artist and often did paintings on mother of pearl shell. He would paint a lady in a hula skirt and write souvenir from Tonga. Grandpa always also did the same. I think most of their art went to America. I will always remember my beloved uncle as a kind man who always did anything and everything for family. Myself, I will never forget his words as long as I live. When I think about him giving me money, Koroa ia Pauline Lupe. He was a talented artist, musician, businessman, and would be politician. Uncle Colomitoni Mataele. I remember Uncle Tony being a handsome, uh, cool uncle. He was always well groomed, dressed dressed well, and would come occasionally to Apele Koula. Most of the stories I heard about him came mainly from my cousin late Laufritonga. He would tell us how he would go to Uncle Tony's place for his holidays. He loved it there because Uncle Tony let him please himself with what he wanted to do. Whether he do work or not, Uncle would never scold him. My late brother, Sione, went to spend time with Uncle Tony in Tonga before my family left Tonga to move to New Zealand. I was already in New Zealand at the time. My mom often wrote to Ladai as she would her other siblings and families. My mother always spoke highly of her brother, even if we didn't see him much. She also loved her sister-in-law, Ladai, and spoke very highly of her as well. She said that she was so happy her brother settled down with a good woman. She would always tell Talanoa about Irene. She wished she could send Irene beautiful things from New Zealand and that she would love for her to learn piano. I did see Auntie Ladai with my children after my husband passed away in 2018. We went to Iona's place and met with her. I wasn't sure if she would remember me, but she did, and she even remembered my parents. It is a blessing that Auntie Ladai is still with us, even though I never got to see more of my Uncle Tony before he passed. To me, he will always be that cool, handsome, well-dressed man I always remember. Mm. Victory Mataele. I know Vic is my uncle, but he's younger than me, and he was more like a little brother. To this day, he doesn't like me calling him uncle, only my children. When we were children, I grew up closely with Auntie Lavi and Uncle Vic. They were my playmates, and every time I went to Tonga, I always went to see them. Uncle Vic was the youngest of us three at the time, and followed us around. He was more calm and composed compared to Lavi and I. Sometimes he wouldn't follow us if he knew we were up to mischief, usually planned by Lavi. Auntie Lavi often bullied us, being younger than her. She was the princess of Apele Koula. We were the minions that followed the princess everywhere she went. I remember telling Uncle Vic as adults about things that we did as children, and he could vaguely remember it. After a few stories here and there, he started to recall some of it. I was the busybody out of all of us. I noticed everything. Lavi was the ringleader and planned everyone's day and activities. Uncle Vic would quietly follow along, and whatever we got stuck doing, he would take off quick smart. As a child, though he did sing a lot and was musical as he was growing up, so it was no surprise he would be so talented as he had wonderful voice. I heard his voice for the first time when I came home from Liahona College. I told my mom I had no idea that Uncle Vic had such a great voice. I remember one time singing with him and Auntie Lavi at the Koromatangi's place after Lavi had already married Semisi. I later learned he moved to Hawaii and started a beautiful family with his late wife, Pat. He had two beautiful children, Ikuna and Maile, and now more beautiful grandchildren. He was well known singer and songwriter. We met again when Auntie Lavi passed away in New Zealand. This was the first time my children got to meet their great uncle. After the funeral, the family went out to a restaurant where he sang live with Siosaia Mataele. All the family, including other guests at the restaurant, loved his performance. He came back to New Zealand a few years later and had dinner with us. We met him once more in 2006, the Tonga Mataele reunion. My children got to go to Apele Koula and stood on the veranda calling out to all their cousins from the other hako to come. Most of the children didn't know why we were there and what we were doing. It wasn't until we told them this is Apele Koula where it all started. Together we all took photo with Hako Maile, Lolo Inoke on the veranda with Uncle Vic before the reunion started. It was very memorable for Uncle Vic and I, as this was our childhood home. It was the last family photo before the riots. If only we could help him to rebuild these great homes once again. Who is that? Oh, I haven't heard from Uncle Vic, but I assume he's doing okay. When this pandemic is over and when it is safe, my family and I are heading back to Tonga to see him and the rest of the family. He's a man with many talents, known for being musical, a wonderful singer, a songwriter, kind, and someone to be proud of. He's singing.
Don't worry about it. Just keep
Yeah,
talking.
William Mataele. As a child, I remember a man named William would often come to our medical. I was told that he was Grandpa's son, Mataele's son. To me, he looked similar to Uncle Vic, with a lot of the same physical traits. When I left Tonga, hadn't heard of him or from him until years later in New Zealand. I met a relation of his. One of our neighbors asked me if I knew a man named William, that he was the son of Mataele. She told me that he had passed on some years ago, but he had family that were doing very well in Tonga. Unfortunately, I don't have much information, but other than Deza, Inga, and some of the family that mentioned him, hopefully, with their sources, they can find his family and reconnect them with us. Auntie Vikatai, Mataele. My older sister was Vikatai. Mom always called her Vikatai. Auntie Vika, as the eldest female, dealt with all the traditional duties for the women of the family. She had an abundance of color and always knew what to do at family functions. Auntie Vika's daughter Sunita and her husband Xiaosi living there. Auntie Vika would come to see them, but she lived in Hateho. I met Vikata's grandchildren, Carlo and Sione Fekau, Tafolo as children. It was at that time that I learned that Auntie Vika was Mom's older sister. When Sunita left there, Mom and I would go to Hateho to see Auntie Vika. Auntie Vika would always go overboard whenever we arrived. She would make steam pudding, and I loved being there because of her young daughter, Se, and son, Mataele, whom I would play with. I remember a woman came to our house from Tonga and told Mom that Vika had passed on. She told Mom that Vika traveled to Hawaii because Hapai was known for making the best fine mats. So Auntie Vika went there to bring koloa for the late Honorable Hahano Vahai's marriage to her late Royal Highness Princess Ruspala Tukwao. Our family was invited to attend the wedding, but when we were unable to make it, instead they just sent us cake from the wedding. My memories of this lovely lady was that my mother was always happy to spend time with her. My mom respected her older sister and felt comfortable going to see her rather than staying with my dad's family in Pea. Whenever we would go to see Auntie Vika, she would take me with her. She looks similar to Mom, but had straight hair like Auntie Simoko. She was tall but shorter than my mom. Auntie Vika was a so kind, loving woman and always had a business mind. She often traveled to Fiji to do business like Mataele, I guess. She had beautiful koloa. If you need koloa whakatonga, Vikatahi was the person to see. Her granddaughter Carlo stayed with me in New Zealand for some time and reminded me a lot of her grandmother. This was before Carlo moved her family to America. I met up with Carlo years later. Uncle Hamid's 80th birthday. She has often come to New Zealand where we would catch up. Carlo has a beautiful home here in Tonga and in America. Like her grandmother, when she does something, she goes all the way, not half pie. I'm very proud of this niece of mine. Sela, Auntie Sela ikahihi from Mataele Maili. The first time I saw Auntie Sela was when I was at Liahona College during a conference. Her husband, Dalano, at the time, had a high position within the church in Tongatapu. Another time I saw her was in Burma when she was at a church meeting and came to spend a weekend with us. Her and Mom would just talk and laugh for hours, staying in her room, only coming out for food. At that time, my cousin Kalani was staying with us, 1951. My dad and Kalani insisted that they stay and eat dinner in the room. The day she left for Tonga was one of the saddest days for my mom, who often missed her family. But luckily, her nephew Kalan was with us. He was the first member of her family to come to Vavau. Uncle Ham would come to Vavau later. During my time at Leona College, can't remember the exact year, but the whole Mataele Hako at Leona traveled to Nukunuku for Auntie Salah's funeral. I went with Auntie Lavi, Carol, Line, Luisa, Laufutong, Kawas. I can't remember if Olivia and Tessa were there. Our cousin Aunt Dorica was outside the house. Someone came and asked Lavi and I to come inside. I remember asking Dorica to come with us because I was too shy. Dorica told me she can't come inside and reminded me of our Tongan prodigal. That's when I found out about Salah's three children, Analevi, Lasoni, and Charles. I remember they had a bakery and that they used to come to sell bread, come to Liahona to sell bread. George left school and came to Liahona to sell bread one day. I went to get some bread from him as I had some money from home. But Xiaoxi wouldn't take the money from me. even when I insisted. I knew he was only doing this because we are first cousins and family. I saw him years later in Arizona. Auntie Lavi took me to see him. I also had a chance to see Sonny when Jason, Dottie, and I went to Tonga. I took one look at Sonny and I thought he was my brother John. They could be twins. Funnily enough, Auntie Sarah resembled my mom. The last time Mom saw our cousin Sonny, his wife Afu and their children Lilika and Marlene, was when they came to New Zealand to go to the temple in Hamilton. The last time my mom would see Silas Hako was when Mornai came to New Zealand. I know my mother would be over the moon if she knew that Mornai and his wife Tita named their children Tupo and Finn after my parents. We met with Mornai over the years in New Zealand and again 2006 with their children, grandchildren at the Mataele reunion in Tonga. It was another reunion within a reunion. Tita is a wonderful, kind lady, and Mornai picked a wonderful woman to marry. We met with Marlini and his lovely wife, Dottie, in 2003, the San Francisco reunion with their family. He had an amazing baritone voice singing. I left my heart in San Francisco. We had time to connect and catch up during a short reunion. We also got to meet a lot of sailors Hako at this reunion. In Tonga, we met Gideon and he was very kind and happy that our family could connect after so long. I met with Lilika at Toti's funeral in Hawaii 2019, where we reconnected once again. She was so kind and gave me perfume, money, and monomon. Auntie Sarah was a wonderful, kind lady, from what my mom told me, and someone my mother loved very much and looked up to, even if they didn't see each other often. Auntie Belenaite Tuturpea Tau Mataele. Auntie Mele Mataele always called me Pauline Tokilut. I'm honored to be named after my grandmother, her mother. She would always talk softly to me and often want to stroke my hair. I can't recall her ever saying a bad word about my parents, especially my dad. I remember one day she came to Apele Koula and my uncle Feki, my dad's adopted brother, was there. Feki is Modao's grandson. His mother, Ofa, was Modao's daughter, but his father, Ulkao, was my grandmother's younger brother. Feki came to take me to Bear for the weekend, and Auntie Mataele walked in to our room and heard that I was leaving for Bear. She said to Feki, "Ai mo ave a Pauline Korovai before ui. Ko pe ai pe, ko pe ai pe." And I and the Foilia I feel. You should take Pauline to Korovai for ui. It's always Bear. And he bad mouthed the place. Auntie Mele forgot that my dad was also in the room with us. When my dad left the room, Mum turned and said to her, "Oku ikai hau whakau ke ene tamai." Don't forget her father is here with us. Auntie Mele replied, O Yahweh, ngaro ai, ka ko e kulea pe a ke tatama ko feki, e ko feki ko e pea. Sorry, she was only addressing Feki, their nephew, because he's a Bear resident. One of the saddest times at Apele Koula was when Auntie Nelly lost her infant daughter to God death. She died peacefully in her sleep. Auntie Mel came to Apele Koula more regularly when she had her baby daughter. I remember she didn't look like a Tongan baby. She was fair and had hazel eyes. I remember one time Auntie Melly brought her to our room early in the day. This may have been around 1948. One evening, Mum noticed the baby had been sleeping for a long time. She told Auntie Melly to go and check the baby. When Auntie went to check the baby, she panicked, asking Mom to check the baby for her. My mom went to the room and sadly shook her head. My baby cousin sadly passed away. Auntie Melia started wailing, crying so loud that everyone ran to our room to see what was happening. Grandpa Mataele was cursing poor Auntie Melia. I remember him saying, "Ko hai mea kutangi ai vale a mere night te tutulpe a tau." Why is that crazy night tutulpe a tau crying? That was the first time I heard Auntie Melia's full name. Auntie Lavi and I took off to the room and we cried with Auntie Melia feeling so sorry for the little baby girl, my cousin and Lavi's niece. An hour later, we overheard Grandpa Mataele announcing that our two daughters, Kaupo and Eleanor, are coming to our house. Please make sure that everyone have tidy room. They came and took our little baby to our mayor's place for the funeral. That's all I recall from that time. I was fortunate enough to meet and confirm this event with God for all years later as we were neighbors in New Zealand. In 1969, I came home from work and Mom told me that an old friend of mine had come over to visit her. I questioned my mom because I thought it was strange that she came to see her instead of me. Mom said, "Do you want to hear what I'm going to tell you or not?" I sat down quietly and listened. Mom told me, "Your friend had a daughter with your tunga ane hahano bahai. She also named the baby Merenaite Tutulpea Tau." And I said, "So?" And she replied, "Don't forget that's Auntie Mella's name." Mom said when she was told, she nearly fell off her chair in shock knowing that my friend doesn't know that's her sister's name. Mom thought Hahano made a point for my friend to come and see Mom and tell her the news. I only saw young Melanite twice when her mother brought her home to see us. The last time uh, was when she was 12. When my mom passed on, I lost his connection with them as we moved house. When we heard Auntie Mele had passed away, Auntie Halaivalu was here in New Zealand. We all gathered at Laufidonga and Longos place. Sipuvailala was there. Simulata, Auntie Lydia Smith, my family and I, and Longos family. Longos family presented Laufidonga with a toy, which was a big puaka. Laufi whispered to me, I'm going to cut it up for us all to share. Auntie Valu overheard him and said, no, 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 no. There's no such thing. You and Pauline have to go and take this story for Auntie Mele's belly. Prince Lavaka. Prince Lavaka was here with Princess Nanasi at that time. Following her instruction, we both went to do Ma'in, present the story to the prince. But the prince was away at the time, and Princess Nanasi received us and the Doi on his behalf. A few weeks later, Her late Majesty Queen Halaivalu Matao to arrive in New Zealand. Lafitong and I took ham, cakes, food to thank her for everything she did in Tonga for Auntie Mele. She shared beautiful and priceless memories of our dear Auntie Mele and crying at the same time. The Queen told us one story when Prince Lavaka had come home from overseas. After greetings, his parents, who were having breakfast, they were watching him going to see Auntie Mele. The king turned to the queen, saying, do you see what I see? The queen told us she saw the prince Feloaki with Auntie Mele. Falala atu kiai. The prince was leaning on Auntie Mele and she was massaging his back. Pea osi pe pea me aia I kai toi. Toi me aia o Feloaki mono toi o kakai I loto palasi. After Auntie Mary massaged the prince's back, he took off without greeting to the rest of the palace staff. Family, Kainga, please excuse the references I use regarding massaging the prince's back, as I'm not familiar with Lefakapa Kito or Pirinisi. Alwa, Nilanite to Pet Ahmatai. He Kainga Rokoi Hatai. He Alwa to Tangata Kito Tangata. He Kainga Apele Mataele. I ngahi lea lele. Moelea uknai kai lele. But to me, you are so famous, and most Tongan heard or knew of you. You were you were loved by church members, adored by the royal family of Tonga, and the most talked about person of the Hako Mataele. Proud and loved by your father, Siosaia Mataele, Neongo Ho'otalangata. Loved and envied by some of your siblings because you were the only one with a Loxio Ata. Young nieces and nephews, lahi tautalahui ka Auntie Mele. But we'll never have a colorful person in the history of Hako Mataele and the Kingdom of Tonga. Gone but never forgotten. From Hako of a young sister, Elisi Laisan Tupo Tania Mataele Fonua. Love you always. Auntie Simoko Mataele Afimui. I really got to know Auntie Simoko when she came to Baba to help my mom when she gave birth to my brother Sione Mulikihano. I had seen her earlier when I was growing up at Apele Koula because she would come there every day, sometimes twice a day. She stayed for a month with us in Mamau, then returned to Tonga before Christmas of 1951. In February 1952, I started attending Pihona College after turning 12. A lot of the other Mataele grandchildren started with me. One day, Auntie Simoko came to see Auntie Lavi and I. She brought 2 loaves of bread each and a lot of colored parrots for our hair. Auntie Lavi and I were so ungrateful. We never bothered to say thank you. Just said, we both said to her, why didn't you bring a tin of corned beef to eat our bread with? She turned to us and said, tuku ho'omo fili fili, koe hao he fu mai le fiha, e sio mai mo o mai ho'omo foima. Stop being fussy. I came miles and miles away to come and see you and to bring you bread for you to eat. We didn't appreciate the efforts of Auntie Simoko at that time because we were young, dumb, and spoiled. Other, other kids would have been so grateful to receive anything, let alone bread in Tonga at that time. Not everyone had the privilege to eat bread or butter. We were very fortunate that we grew up with that privilege because of our grandfather, Mataele. During school holidays, I would mainly spend my time in Bear with my father's family. Sometimes I would go to Nuku'alofa, to Apele Koula, and with Auntie Simoko and Mola at Halatui Road. Whenever she heard that Liahona kids were in town, she always rushed to come to give me a watermelon, some buns or peanuts. Some of my friends said that I'm so blessed and lucky to have an auntie like her who was so kind. They were so right. One night we came out of the movies and there she was waiting near our vehicle. Sorry, with 2 watermelons, and it was raining. I told her off for coming that night because I was afraid she might get sick standing in the rain waiting for me. I still can picture her that night in my mind every now and again. I told my mom when I went back to Vavao, and she cried, saying, that's the love of an auntie to her niece. 4 years later, Auntie Simoko spoiled me with many things. She sewed me beautiful clothes, always got me the latest style clothes, shoes, and always included gifts for her little sister Labi. At the end of 1955, I left Liahon and prepared to travel to Vavao. Auntie Smoko made me a beautiful outfit with Indian sari material, which was a two-piece dress. It was a pink and gold color. Auntie Lavi got me a white pair of Roman sandal type shoes. I was the center of attention at Wuna Wharf because it was packed and the door four was ready to leave for Vavao. When I said goodbye to my 2 aunties, Auntie Simoko and Auntie Lavi, and my little cousin baby Faye, I cried my eyes out because I know I will see them again as my friend, as my family will be moving to New Zealand after Christmas. When I arrived in Malau, my parents couldn't believe that I was their daughter. They said I looked totally different and so beautiful. I told them that it was my 2 aunties that made the effort for me to dress beautifully. I often wish that those two aunties of mine are still alive so I could love spoil them like they have spoiled, like how they have always done to me. I was so lucky and blessed to have them in my life. I will love them always. The only way I can thank them is to do my best for their children, grandchildren, continue the connections with them. Auntie Smoko was a beautiful, kind, loving woman who went above and beyond for her family no matter what she had. She always gave the best. Auntie Irene Fadafehi Mataele Nemeth. When I grew up, I heard of Auntie Fehi and that she was raised by the Ungalo family after our grandmother passed away. She attended Queen Charlotte College at the time. She came to stay at Apele Koula briefly before traveling to New Zealand in 1949 to do her nurse training. When she had completed her studies, she returned to Tonga around 1955. I remember the day she arrived on the Matua. Grandma Polotu and I went to the wharf to welcome her and met up with Auntie Merimatai. Auntie Fehi was transported straight away to her new place. In the afternoon, Auntie Simoko and I went to the Maungaloa residence. All the family from Kolowai came to welcome Auntie Faye and to celebrate her achievement as the first Tongan registered nurse from New Zealand. All members of the family, including Paulina's parents, my great-grandparents, Lakuru and Loeni, were there. Pauline's younger sister, Alice, Lisan, and Mele Hoko with me, David and Susie's grandmother was there. I remember Mele Hoko because when we first met that day, she cried remembering her cousin Pauline, and she asked that I sit with her that day. I later met Mele Hoko's daughter, Motulalo, and her brother, Manako Tau, who was a boxer in Fiji. At the time, we were on our way to New Zealand. Auntie Fehi came back to New Zealand in 1958 for vacation. She decided to get a nursing job at St. Helens Hospital when she was in New Zealand. Earlier training at Midmore Hospital, she would send me 2 dresses, matching shoes for the Leahona dedication when I was still at school. This time around, I was in New Zealand the same time with her. At the time, I was staying with Auntie Melemapa, waiting for my parents to arrive. I really got to know her better during the time she was here. She often visited me and Auntie Mele, sharing food and quality times. One day she came over with some bacon bones we had already eaten, so she was cooking the bacon bones in the pot. Within minutes of the food being cooked, she was standing next to the pot, taking out the bones out and started eating where, where she stood. Her pretty dress was covered in bacon fat and ngako, but Auntie Fehi couldn't care. She asked us to join her, and Auntie Mary was too busy laughing and mocking. She said to me, I wish, Auntie Mary said to me, I wish the doctors at the hospital could see her now. If I was her patient, seeing her do that, I get another nurse. We all laughed, and Auntie Mele said, Manatuai ki Apele Koula. A few weeks later, Auntie Faye came over again to tell us that she'll be leaving New Zealand, moving to England. I remember at the time Auntie Faye was strict with me, wanting me to attend Diocesan School for Girls in Auckland or Queen Victoria College. You got that back that in Auckland that year. New Zealand with boarding school. I used to go and see her every morning before heading to school so she could see that I was okay. Sometimes she had a do not disturb sign on her door. And if I'm desperate for something, I knock on her door anyway. She come out of her room and start lecturing me. Can't you read? Yeah. Auntie Faye thought I was spoiled, idle, and wasted too much time doing everything but study. Auntie Mary Mappa told her to mind her own business and leave me alone. Whakamaho fie pureki ai. Shame on you doing that. My dad won't like it. Regardless of that, she still tried to get me to move to England with her so I could be trained as a nurse like her and work at St. Luke's Hospital. I really miss her when she left for England. One day, Auntie Melimapa picked up the New Zealand Herald paper and saw a big story on Auntie Faye in England. It was also mentioned about her career change from nursing to work in office, then switching back to nursing so she wouldn't be behind with technology and medicine. It mentioned about her background in Tonga and how she studied in New Zealand. Our family was so proud of her. We later heard Auntie Faye moved to Toronto, Canada, where her children, Michael and Christine, and their family are now living. Auntie Faye always wanted to help my mom. She even wanted my sister Ken and my brother Arthur to move to Canada, but our dad didn't agree, but appreciated her kindness. He thought she was better off helping families in Tonga who needed the help more than we did. When my three girls were young, she sent beautiful things for them, included 11 watches, hair braids, combs for the girls. It was their first watches. I laughed at the parcel as she was in a rush and wrapped it in a t-shirt. My children never forgot as it was their first watches and gifts from Canada. Auntie Faye always sent things to mom for myself, my sister Oskina, and now my children. Years later, 2003, I would meet up with her again. Frisco with daughter Bex. She was still the same, lecture me about my health. And once again gave me another bag of jewelry and watches for my family. I made a vow to myself to always call my auntie every month if she was one of the last aunties left. We spoke every month up until she passed. During our last conversation, she told me she wanted to meet up together in Tonga. The last phone call I made to her, I found out she passed away. I spoke with my cousin, her daughter Christina, who said one day we should all go together to Tonga for her mom. I saw photos of her funeral online that one of the family had posted. Years later, in 2011, Auntie Faye's son, her cousin Michael, and his beautiful wife, the Mana, came to a place for dinner before going to Australia and Dog. We shared quality time together and spent hours talking and reminiscing about Auntie Faye. I know without a doubt this auntie loved me very much and wanted me to be good and proper. I had a strong feeling that she wanted me to follow in her footstep and become a nurse. The only problem was I wasn't as smart as her. She was strong, intelligent, confident in herself, businesswoman and independent woman who raised her family on her own. She was very proud of her lineage and a very, very kind and loving woman. My dear Auntie Laisan Tupotani Halao, Mataele Halao. Auntie Sani was a regular visitor to Apele Koula when I was a child. Mom told me that she was her younger sister. After the first fire that destroyed Apele Koula, I had a chance to see her a couple of times when I attended Leona College. Years later, saw Auntie San in 1969 in New Zealand. He came from home one day. I came from home one day and my mom told me that her sister San and husband David were here in New Zealand and she wanted to go and see them. At the time, Auntie Larry had recently left New Zealand for Samoa after spending time with us. Mom had asked me if I remember her sister, and I said, yes, I know Auntie San. Mom asked, where would I have remembered her from? I told her, of course, I remember seeing her at Apele Koula. Mom asked me to describe what she looked like, and I told her I also remember her smiling face and her laughter because she was always laughing. She was also a very pleasant lady. Mom said, yes, that's right, that I had a good memory. Mm. Auntie Sani came to our house and spent time with Mom. Mom took her shopping and showed her around Auckland City. It was a very happy time for my mom. When these two sisters would talk, there would be loud reminiscing about their sibling and and their father. I also learned at that time that Uncle David, Zani's husband, was related to my dad from the same hako as Auntie Halaiwal. The day that Zani and Devita left, my mom cried hard like she did with Auntie Lavi, leaving for Samoa. She kept saying that she doesn't think she'll see her sisters again. A year, my late, a year later, my beloved mother passed away. Years later, in the early 80s, I met up with Auntie Sani again. She came home with her daughter Manu, son-in-law Ian, and their two girls, Tahira and Juliana. We had quality time together catching up. She constantly praised me and my steamed pudding, which her husband loved to eat. She reminded me not to forget to make a steamed pudding for my tamai, her husband David, because my pudding was the best. Years later, I would find out my beloved auntie has passed away. I will always remember Auntie Sane as being a happy, smiling, and pleasant person to be around. She was very loving, kind, proud, and loved her Mataele family. Now, Auntie Lovely of America for Nofehi. This little auntie of mine, Lovely of America, was more like an older sister than an aunt. I spent most of my childhood with her playing, crying, laughing, fighting, eating together, even playing marbles and getting up to mischief. When my family returned to Tonga from New Tap in 1946, we spent a week in Pea with my dad's family. Uncle Feki, my dad's younger brother, arrived at Pea after doing shopping in Nuku'alofa, telling us that Grandpa was asking when we're coming back to Apele Koula. Our rooms and everything are ready and waiting for us. That was when we moved to Apele Koula. At first, it was like a culture shock for me, as I had been away for 3 years, 3.5 years, and had to get reacquainted with everybody and everything. Of course, my greatest teacher was none other than my Auntie Lavi. She was the princess of Apele Koula and the family. She taught me lots of things like how to handle money, giving change to customers when we work in the store. She taught me how to swim, getting Siosaia Mataele and the boys to throw me into the ocean. She taught me how to sing and play marbles with the band boys from Apele Koula. Their parents had a restaurant there. Poor grandpa tried so hard to stop us playing marbles. He said playing marbles are for the may tangata. He put this top part of a lorry truck, which was used for transporting army soldiers, and converted it into a dolly house for Auntie Lavi and I. It had a mannequins dressed in hula skirts and lay, and a dolly bed with other stuff included. Auntie Lavi and I heard about the Hawaiian hula girl, even America at early age, thanks to Grandpa. We pretended to enjoy the dolly house, even trying to sleep there for the first night. Halfway during the night, we took off to our rooms. And every time he asked, oh, despite all Grandpa's efforts to make a dolly house, a few days later, we were back to playing marble with the band boys. Again, every time he asked if we love our dolly house, we just smiled and say, lied and said, yes, Grandpa. Eh. At time, at this time is mentioned, early Auntie Lavi, Uncle Vic, and I would look after Uncle Chief's shop. Grandpa had other people taking care of his shop, like Sailor, Grandma Tangakina's daughter. Sometimes Eva from the new Maydole family would assist and others. Auntie Lavi was a few years older than me. I was a few years older than Uncle Vic. This all occurred from 1947, 1950. After the first fire at Apele Koula, my family left for about 1951. We came back to Tonga in 1952. From there, Lavi and I attended Leona College with Carlo Kawasi, Luisa Laufitonga, George, Delano, Olivia, Line, and Tessa, who enrolled a year later. I remember 19. Oh,
Just don't panic.
oh,
Don't panic. Don't. It's all right.
I think I leaned.
No. Don't worry.
Mm.
Just everyone, just bear with us a moment, please. Don't worry. Just don't put your hand on the laptop, Mum. That's what happened.
Lisa, I put my.
Don't worry. We're nearly there.
Is this the intermission part?
Not quite. She hasn't quite finished.
I put my
It's
hand
called
on top.
what it is sorry family, what it's called is my mum touching keys that she shouldn't be touching on the laptop.
I get carried away.
Sorry guys, I'll get everyone, I will get you there in a minute. Just bear with me.
I love your explanation. Oh.
What's that?
Pakalata ho matala, Pauline.
The holoipo.
No, it's so nice.
Sorry about the English. Yeah.
Wait, just wait.
Just where
Hang on,
was I?
I'm nearly there. Where Auntie Lovely, if you bear with
Yeah.
me a moment.
Was
Auntie Pauline, how old are you?
81.
Oh my word, you're so young.
I'm older than your Auntie Desa.
Actually, Tanya, they're the same age. Mum was
Get-
born in
get
January, Auntie Dace in December, I think.
Right. She's still beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mummy, well, let's go back.
Oh, no. Hang on. It was Auntie Lovey.
You were up to here. Auntie
Yeah,
Lovey was
95.
all right, back
Yeah.
to it. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Can you down? After the first fire at Apele Koula, my family left for about 1951. We came back to Tonga in 1952. From there, Auntie Lavi and I attended Liahona College with Carol, Kawasi, Luisa, Laufilitonga, Losaline, Xiao, Staranoa, Olivia. I think Tesa was enrolled a year later. Goya Isa. Yeah. I remember in 1953, I went to see Grandma Pulotu and Grandpa Mataele. And Auntie Simoko, before Auntie Simoko took me to the Una Wharf to get the tofu back to Vava'o for my vacation. Grandma Pulotu kept pestering me on Auntie Lavi's whereabouts because she found it odd that Lavi wasn't with me. I had no idea that Lavi already planned to go with me to Vava'o. After I boarded the tofu boat, saying my goodbyes to my to my auntie Simoko, the gangway was pulled up and I went up with my friend to the next floor. I heard beautiful guitar playing and singing, and I knew straight away it was my auntie Lavi. She's taking off with me to Vava'o. I got a shock, even my mom and dad, but was so thrilled to see her after a few years. The following year, I returned back to Tonga without her, as she didn't want to go back to school. She wanted to stay with my parents. She told me to tell Grandma and Grandpa that she'll be in Mamao for a few months. When my family moved to New Zealand, I often heard my mom reminiscing about her little sister Lovely, wishing that she could come with us. She would be able to experience things she was accustomed to in her early life. Little did Mom know that Auntie Lovey would end up with a wonderful life and family. In 1969, Auntie Lovey came to see my mom a year after her father passed away. She always sent me Avon perfume, which we never had in New Zealand at the time. She also sent newly styled clothes, wigs, coats of that time. I watched the two sisters as they said their goodbye. I have never seen my mom cried so much for a long time. I guess she had a feeling that would be the last time she see her little beautiful sister. That was the last time they saw each other. Mom passed away the following year, 1970. The day before my mom passed away, I received a letter from Auntie Lavi with some American dollars asking me to get some fruit or whatever my mom needed. A few months later, Auntie Lavi came to see me and spent 2 weeks with us and had a case full of stuff, clothes for me and my sister Kenna. She visited again and happened to arrive on the day I got engaged to my husband, Ray. When I saw her, I cried, telling her the news, saying, Fia Fia, koe hao e ki whae, ki hoko ke ko engagement. I'm glad my mother is here for my engagement. She said, just stop there, don't tell me more, because I'll have a heart attack. Then she said, wait, I'll to wait and see if the man you're marrying is suitable for you, is suitable for you. I love this auntie so much because she always wanted me to have the best of everything in life she had in our family. She was a talented singer, songwriter, dancer, businesswoman who loved the gospel, was very kind with a heart full of gold, but also mischief, daring, confident, and my childhood bully, but I would never have it any other way. O whalahi at isi whawhongai kai ngaro koe atai. Ho Ophaya, I will never forget you for being so kind to me until we meet again. Oh, this is for my mom. Elisi ilasan tu bodane, Mataele Fonu. My mom was a tall, big built lady with thick curly hair. I didn't know her exact height, but my cousin Kawashi told my children that his beloved auntie Dubo was around 6 foot tall. My mom was a social person and loved learning about family history. She did family genealogy for us as well as for the Tongan Saints in New Zealand and work at the Family History Center. I was told by members of the church that they were at ease conversing and working with her on their family history. This was one of her passions. She loved to help others through sending parcels to friends and family in Tonga, Hawaii, and Wala. Sometimes without our knowledge, she would help herself to our clothes and our shoes. If she didn't buy anything from the jumble sale, she would send all the stuff she collected off to Tonga. If I had a two-piece outfit, I'll find one piece missing because Mum had already sent it home to Tonga. When I would ask her why she only sent one piece, she would say, you got too many clothes, many things. Though it would annoy and upset me, years later I find myself in her position with my own children when I would do the same thing with their clothes and send it off to Tonga to Longa, the late Queen Madaho's charity for years. One time, Mum went to a jumbo sale with Auntie Kaufo'o and some others. They all got a shock when they heard Mum asking the organizers if she could buy out the whole hall filled with clothes and assorted things. The organizer agreed, probably thinking she'll pay $100, but she only offered $20, not more, not less, and negotiated those terms, even though those things probably cost more than $20. Mom bargained and got to sell like a true Mataele. She then rang Peter Vete, my dad's cousin, and asked him to please bring his truck and help her to transport these things home. Peter agreed but had no idea how much stuff Mum got. She even bought a willow and dinner set and 4 big trays. We were all mad at her for filling our place and veranda with all the stuff from jumbo sale. She told us not to get mad because she'll clear everything everything out within a few days. She rang around to everyone, giving things away. She filled 2 boxes full of things, including the willow set to send to one of our teacher in Hapai. We asked her to keep the willow set and trays because they're expensive. She told us, I already know about these things. These people will make better use of it than yourself. Mom really loved her nieces and nephews. From the memory, the ones that came to stay with her in Vavau. Kalani was the first one, 1951. Ani, Ani Sepi, Atitorika, Rafidonga, uh, and Auntie Lavi and Joe came to stay with her after taking. Oh, Rafidonga came to stay with her after taking off from school too, like Lavi, 1955. He stayed there till we to till we left to come to New Zealand, 1956. Tuilatai came to see us off when we left. Our neighborhood in Vavau always knew when the Mataele clan came because they could always hear singing, laughing, coming from our place. One of my dad's relatives, Sarah, said to me when I arrived from the school that she noticed that when my father got up to have breakfast, to go to work, everyone was still sleeping. And when he got back, they were all lying around the house singing and playing music. Sometimes would make his own dinner, but never complain as he loved having the Mataele family at home. I remember one time when we arrived in Auckland, we came past a jewelry shop and Mom saw a greenstone Benton. She called me to come and have a look and told me, oh, and said to me, so this is where my dad got my necklace when I was 11 years old. This was the first time I ever heard her mention my grandpa and her childhood. Mom loved her food and wasn't a fussy eater. She loved her seafood, especially mullet and kingfish. She wasn't much of a cook because she never had to cook. She never told us much about her childhood because none of us thought to ask. I spent a lot of my time away from my family that never occurred to me to ask till our late father passed on. And she told me a few personal things. Yeah. One of them was how I got my name. She asked me, do you have any idea where you got your name from? After telling her no, she explained that I was named by her grandmother, Lueni Moungaloa, my great grandmother. Lueni named me after her daughter, my grandmother Pauline Tokilupe. I asked Mom whether I was born illegitimate. why I was named by her mother's side. I know in the Tongan custom, the firstborn always named, if I'm right, by the father's family. Mom was upset at what I said and told me, no, that was not the case. It was a long story and involved a time when my parents got married. To keep things brief, my parents were matched by Grandpa Mataele himself. Both my parents descend from Bahai Utoikaman. My mom refused to marry my dad unless he became a member of the church. He agreed and they married in the church. there's something after. My father, Siosaia was not pleased. His firstborn was marrying a Mataele. He was a Methodist and didn't approve of the Mormon church. Unknown to me, both grandfathers knew each other well. My father is a direct descendant from Namoa's sister, Luisa Taukitonga Tap. Mom is a descendant from Namoa, which made them distant cousins. When I was born, my father's family didn't name me, as you know. I was told that one day Grandpa Mataele was holding me while sitting outside the veranda, the front yard of Apele Koula. He saw my mehikitanga now and called out to her and asked her to come and see her little niece. When my auntie came and held me, Grandpa started cursing her and said, "How dare you people despise my daughter? Who do you think you are?" Embarrassed, my auntie asked if she could take me to bear. Grandpa agreed. After she brought me back, my dad's family asked if they could have me christening, christening bear. I think at the Methodist. Before she passed away, Alice Lisa, Grandma Pauline's sister, told me that on the day of my christening, she went with my mom, Grandma Puloto, Auntie Simoko, together to take me to bear. Grandpa told them that's all they will attend. That's all that will attend. He won't send more people because we have no idea what those wild people are up to. I hope my father's people aren't listening. Alice told me that my christening was big. The whole village came, and she said to Grandma Polotu, "There's so many people here, like the whole village." Grandma Polotu said, "That's because we have their little princess." I had no idea Mom could tap dance or play piano. I only ever saw this when Uncle Hameti came over. I was told about Mom's step dancing by LDS members when they all visited the late Queen Madaho in New Zealand before their coronation. Her Majesty called out to Mum, "Tupo, we need you to come to do tap dancing for us at our coronation. I heard you're a good tap dancer." My mom attended Makeke College while in Tonga. I don't have any stories from that time, but what I do know is that she was very easygoing in nature and didn't worry much about things. She was a kind, loving woman who, like her many siblings, loved the family and went above and beyond for them. She was very proud of her family and very proud to be a Madai. The time that I spent with my parents and siblings was so priceless and precious to me, even though I didn't spend a lot of time with them, but they all sacrificed a lot for me to come to New Zealand while they stay in Tonga or Fusimoomo. How I wish I could turn the clock back to see my parents because they passed away so early. Mom, thank you for all the sacrifice you and Dad had done for me. I can't find the right words to express how grateful I am. I only wish you were alive to see me now with my little family. I always try to follow the right thing you taught me, to be good, kind, and respect the family and love everybody the same You always taught me to find the good in everyone. Ikai ke ngaro ko e hatai no au ke hatai te matea. I won't forget you till the day I die. I love you, Mom. That was the end of my.
One more, lucky left.
Pakalata.
Yeah.
Pauline. Thank you, Pauline.
This is the last one,
This is
everybody.
the one
Grandpa
you've been
Mataele.
waiting for. Yeah, this is the Taukui. Siosaia Mataele Hamdi.
All right.
Siosaia Mataele Hamdi. I spent most of my childhood living at Apele Koula, except when my family spent 3.5 years living between Uatoptap and Newfort. Grandpa Mataele was a tall, handsome, slender man who didn't worry much about how he looked. He idolized Gandhi and sometimes wore spectacles just like him and dressed similarly to him with a tupino. When we came to live at Apele Koula in 1947, I was 7 years old. I couldn't remember much since I last left at the age of 4, but it took me a few weeks to get used to remembering everything, even Auntie Lavin, Uncle Vic, and everyone. Everyone at Apele Koula called Grandpa Tangata Eki. At first, I was a bit shy because I was only get used to being with my parents and my 2 young siblings and 2 young people and a couple who used to help mom with daily chores. While we moved to our Koula, my dad's first task was to enroll me at St. Andrew's Primary School. At first, I hated because Auntie Lavi and Uncle Vic attended another school, which was public primary school. I think that we call out I didn't like it at St. Andrew because my dad had to accompany me to school every day. A few weeks later, he allowed me to go with the Tevi, Fetutuki and Tevi's children and others. Every morning Apele, at Apele Koula, Grandpa would call all of us kids for morning prayer and service. He started by saying a prayer and then would tell a story from the Bible. We all had to learn and memorize the names of the 12 apostles. This little prayer meeting was only for the residents at Apele Koula, not outsider except Feal and Santini's children. Do you know Feal, Bo? Grandpa
Yes,
called
yes.
his Grandpa
Now kau nga
said
api mo mea
that no
mo
mo
sala mo mea mo
Iyo.
sala mo. Yes.
Yeah. Grandpa called his little prayer meeting Koitahin Sayone. He often preached from the veranda, and 3 of us, myself, Auntie Lavi, and Uncle Vic, will always have to accompany him in case he needed us to recite the 12 apostles or any verses from the Bible. I have a lot of fond memories of Grandpa Mataele. He always treated us with love and care. I remember receiving a few boxes of assorted biscuit. How did I put it for? Assorted biscuit from overseas. He got someone to distributed all the biscuits among us children under the breadfruit tree, and it had to be shared equally. Nobody missed out. He would sit in front of us like the King of Siam from the movie, the king and I. Then he would call our names out to receive our share. Once you receive your share, you have to take it to your own room. There were three other friends from the Bain family, not related to us, but their parents, Anna and Falani, had a restaurant at Apele Koula. They had two children and one helper. These three kids were always included whenever Grandpa was sharing things. Grandpa even shared his parliamentary salary to all of us kids every time he got paid. Because he didn't pay much, eh, as far as I remember, Apele Koula had 14 rooms. 14 rooms. Two, not counting the kitchen, grandpa's shop, Uncle Aloma's shop, and a little shop that opens up at night, for the movie goer. One sewing room, one restaurant, one for food preparation, one for bicycle repairs, and 6 bedrooms. Is that what I mean?
Yep, you got that. Up to Grandpa was
Yeah.
a business.
Grandpa was a businessman, but didn't act like one. He wasn't the type that counted every cent like many people that had accounts at his shop. Were often told by Grandpa to pick what they want and record it in the account book. I remember one day a man called Balahame, we know Balahame, had an
Yeah,
account,
I
had an,
remember.
had an account at the shop, at Grandpa's shop, and stopped by. Grandpa said, "Oh, you know the drill. You get your things and you must note it down." While Balhami was doing that, Grandpa took off on his bike, parked outside. Balhami came out afterward and complained, asking Lavi and I if Grandpa was in his room. We said no, but curious to know why he wanted to know where Grandpa was, as we didn't see him. Balhami went silent, then called out to say, "Don't worry about it, it's okay," because he knew that Grandpa already took off on his bike. Unfortunately, it wasn't the first time. Tangataiki did this all the time. When Grandpa needed to go somewhere, he would just help himself to any bike that parked outside his home and take off. Didn't matter who owned the bike, everybody at Apele Koula and the neighbors all knew this. Another time I remember was whaling season. We hadn't tasted whale meat before. Someone told Grandpa that the Cook family caught a large whale. So Grandpa rushed to buy some whale meat. He thought that we will like it. He arrived home and instructed Auntie Tetefa on how to cook as though he had it before, the whale meat. He bought more than enough for everyone in Apele Koula, as, as it was a new thing. Grandma always wanted to introduce us to all kinds of food. I noticed too that Grandpa loved to eat bread with anything or any type of meat. There was a room full of Tongan food there at Apele Koula, as he bought a lot from the growers and would sell it wholesale. hardly anyone wanted to eat taros or yam. They would rather eat bread and something. Occasionally, someone will have a haka taro and haka ufi with tin or corned beef, and everyone would jump to eat. Us kids were so lucky to have cow's milk delivered to Apele Koula every morning. Grandpa had his own one-handle pot for his milk. He loved to drink hot milk and must be scalding hot. When you serve it to him, if it's not hot, he'll throw it out and curse poor Auntie Dedefa who was in charge of the kitchen. I really enjoyed growing up when Grandpa was still alive. He always made sure that us children had the best and to have a good breakfast before going to school. Of us children at Apele Koula, Auntie Lavi was the eldest, then me, then Uncle Vic, my sister Osikena, my brother Fangpo, Auntie Boka, Uncle Lucky, and my brother Arthur, Rotorua, and Alexandra. That's the one yeah. That was the kids there at the time. For Lavi and I, our day consisted of getting Grandpa's daily news from near Fern Phillips and the Helita resident. We had to show up at 4 p.m. every day from Monday to Friday. We were like twins. Other things we did included going to piano lesson at Melmataka's place, mango pickings, going to visit the new Maytol family in Anasioeli at Koromotor. We also loved going swimming and forever playing marbles with the Bain boys. During this time, the newest arrival to the block was the Bansi Indian family from Fiji. Growing up, we were close with our neighbors, the Kolomatangi. Oh, the Kolomatangi boys, Ita, the Vikilani children, and Natalie's family, who were next door to Vikilani. Also Haloti and Popua across the road where the Smith resident was. These were our neighbors, including Carlo and Manasseh Malkai Kolomatangi, Beauty's grandparents, Manasseh Maamahi, Devi and Fetutuki family, Kausiksi Weti, Bosaati Ititi, and the Tuinakuafe family. Also the Tome family, the Meantea family. Our other neighbors were the Cowley, Namo and Wata family, Vidi Solo family, and the Nakao, it's oh there, Nakao family, instead of you. I remember Grandpa always going on about his family history, genealogy, I should say. He knew all the relations around the block. These were the people he claimed to be closely related to him and lived close to Apele Koula. The Namomo family, Merimataka, Waihako Fatafi, Anau Maafu from the Namoa line, Fusmaatu, where Auntie, Princess Melnite's auntie. Grandpa always talked about the Bahai and the Sekon and Huni family. He claimed that Huni's wife, Leporo, was his cousin. His acquaintances were Afuta Moepeau, Puri Uvea, Afuha Mango, the Honorable Lata of Korovai, and Honorable Nduku. One day, Honorable Lata would often come to Apele Koula to get tobacco. The tobacco was compact in the length and thickness of an adult arm. Grandpa was nice to him, but he would sometimes curse him with foul languages. Despite the fact he would curse Atta, he still gave him free tobacco. Grandpa imported all kinds of different goods from overseas. I remember those big blocks of cheese he tried very hard to get us to like. We instead prefer processed cheese. He also imported tins of butter because there wasn't any freezer like that today. His shop was different to Uncle Loloma's shop, but only by a few things. One day, Grandpa summoned Lavi and I to do an important errand for him. He wanted us to deliver a letter to Her late Majesty Queen Charlotte and only Queen Charlotte. We tried to pack out of it, but Grandpa insisted that his letter be delivered directly to the Queen's hand. So we took the letter to the palace, but being scared because we were to approach Her Majesty, we gave it to the guard, telling him it was from our grandfather. It was Lavi's their father. For the Queen, the guard told us he can escort us directly to the Queen with the letter, like we were instructed. We were too scared and asked him to do it for us. When we got home, Grandpa called us to check if we had delivered his letter to the Queen, which is told him yes and tried to avoid further questioning. Grandpa often went to the post office and sometimes he would forget his tangay paanga and his little cushion. The staff would always call us saying, Katangataiki left his tangay paanga and cushion for someone to collect it for him. It was Lavi and I who were sent to collect it on his behalf. Grandpa loved having visitors and was very social. He loved being praised and adored and had a strong interest in Western ways. Sometimes I think people took his kindness for granted. I remember one day Auntie Tetefa was cooking some pancake. Oh, those cake were like those cake isite, but without the yeast.
Roasted peanuts.
Mm. And roasted peanuts for the evening for the little for the small shop. Auntie Kaffa and Auntie Kaffa was a regular visitor to Apele Koula. Palaham and two others came and they helped themselves to the peanuts, laughing, mm, eating, talking, and laughing. And the next thing, Grandpa joined them, doing the same thing, eating and laughing. Auntie Lavi and I were busy watching from the side. But a few days later, other people came and eating peanuts and pancakes. And Grandpa walked in and cursed them, saying, "This is not a charity home." Actually, he said, "Ko Apele Koula o kai ko api ke kau," you know what charity is. The sudden mood change told me that Grandpa was often moody. I often wondered in my child's mind whether people eating this food meant no profit for Grandpa. I can never forget the time these men came over to survey the place next door to Apele Koula to build a new cinema.
Grandpa.
Grandpa went berserk and tried to kick them out, saying that he didn't want any favor in case Apele Koula might get burned. Those words were in my mind forever because unfortunately the place was burned to ashes later on. In those days, there was no fire brigade to put it out the fires. I remember Grandpa loved his seafood. He liked to eat lom, jellyfish, vasuba, and fish. You know, he loves fish. I was so blessed and honored to have a chance of a lifetime to live with the grandpa and grandma Pulot. Grandma Pulot was so beautiful, kind and easygoing and pleasant. Grandma Lina, her sister, was the one that straightened us if we were up to no good. I loved this grandma because she always made beautiful twin clothes for Lavi and I and took care of us. In 1949, my parents were due to go to New Australia for their vacation. My dad changed his mind at the last minute and decided to go to our Apiuta and plant some vanilla.
Oh,
I I remember the day we left Apele Koula. I was so upset, so Auntie Lavi. We both cried, questioning my mom about so many, why are we leaving and all that. Mom said that her and dad will sort out things, then we might come back to our Pelicola. We said our goodbyes and left. We were only away for 3 weeks when the government official came to ask if my dad could take over the custom, work at the custom department. It was an urgent role and they tried to discourage them, but they insisted that he was the right person for the role. When I heard that, it meant that we would go back to our billet goal. A few days later, my uncle came to Fualu to break the news gently to my mom that Apele Koula got burned the night before. As soon as he started talking, saying there was a big fire in Nukarofa, my mom was crying, wailing, and carrying on. She told me, "Don't tell me anymore. I know it's my dad's place." She rushed and got me dressed and took off running with me at her side. The distance from our Apiuta to Nukarofa was 2 miles from our Apiuta to Bea and from Bea to Nucala 4 miles. A lot of people saw us stop to offer us a ride and say sorry about her home. She refused any rides from anyone wanting to help her and continued to cry and pull me along with her. I kept crying and a few times she stopped me to say, "O ikai ke ofa ke ho'okui. Don't you love your grandfather?" We got to Nuku'alofa and I looked at my mom and I was ready to drop in exhaustion. Grandpa and Grandma Pulotu and the children were at Maka's place, a few yards from Malaikula, next door to Bamani's shop. All the hako were there, sons, daughters, grandchildren, children, in-laws, and we all gathered at the place watching Grandpa while he was asleep. When we arrived, I looked at my mom, and once she saw her father, she was relieved that everyone was safe and okay. Since we couldn't move to Apele Koula, we moved to Pea to stay there for 3 months, which was the longest I ever been in my dad's village. My father was asked to be transferred to Vavao. We moved there in February 1951. I found Grandpa to be kind and giving. He was unbiased and treated everyone the same. I often wish that Grandpa was still around so that I could tell him I'm honored to be one of his granddaughters and convey to him how proud I am of his achievements. He was a modern thinker. He was a modern man, a forward thinker, and at that time was very Western in his ways. He was outspoken, always spoke his mind, and didn't care what anyone else thought. He was highly intelligent and well read. He idolized world leaders, and he was one of the pioneers of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Tonga. He was a proud, loving father to many grandfather, to many great-grandfather, to many and so on and so forth with our Hako. God bless Hako Mataele for our global. He loved his family and was very proud of his Wahai line and the Kormotua line. He was the grandson of Wahai Langoia Ek in his own right, buried with the Wahai family at Tutubeatau in Foi. He was the great-great-grandson of King Momoi from his son Namoa. He was an honorable member of the Tongan Parliament. He was named Businessman of the Century 20,000 by Taimitong. He was the first Tongan man to own a car in 1926. He repealed the act banning foreigners coming to Tonga on the 3rd of July 1924. He was the first Tongan to insure his property through New Zealand. He was the first Tongan to fill a steamship with copra destiny to New Zealand. The New Zealand company was bankrupt at the time. Pea ikai I loi te koe hae mea nai hoko. Tuigatai told me during his time in Parliament that he discovered that Grandpa tried to legalize prostitution, giving young women the right to make a living. As controversial as that sounds to everybody, I can believe he would do something like that. Grandpa was a man that followed nobody. I should know. He lived by his own rules in his own little kingdom. He was a man before his time, and if he had an interest in technology and science, like he did business and art, I have no doubt he would have been the Elon Musk of Tonga. He had an exceptional mind, and he was an artist, poet, punake, composer, and some others. He was a multi-talented and tried his hand at things that others laugh at with his forward thinking. He was like the father of modern Tonga during his time. He loved knowledge and sought it by any means possible all the time and was trailblazing in his own way with businesses. I often heard people, especially family, label him as an eccentric, crazy, philanderer, and a lot of negative views have been passed down about him simply because people don't know him and they don't like anything different. Respectfully, I understand that many in the family only know one version of Grandpa and some may know nothing. But I hope you can understand that he was more than what you know, and to me, he was more than meets the eye. He's not there for any of us to judge, ask or question why he did, or said what he did, or live how he did. during his time. I like to think that Grandpa wanted to create a better world and future for all Tongans, and especially his family. He tried to help modernize Tonga for a better future. If you see people in our family who are different, who don't follow the herd, don't judge them so harshly. Think about what you learned today about Grandpa Mataele and how different he was in a time where the modern world clashed with the old world. What he did then, we do now, but in his time, it was seemed crazy. Only he would put people's name on the board in public who owe him money. Back then, that was seen scandalous and shameful. Today, this would be seen as normal. Thank you, Grandpa. Our beloved Tante Aiki, for giving me a mother, aunts and uncles, cousins, family who live all over the world. I'm grateful for my time with you at Apele Koula, the place I was born, and am very proud of. I hope you see that all your hard work paid off with your progeny. Your love for the gospel is still strong in the family. The love for each other still exists among each branch and flows strongly wherever they are. The pride in being Mataele or member of the Mataele family is still very strong today. Your love for America was fulfilled by your children moving to the promised land to have their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Most of the Hako of the Mataele now live in the United States. The rest of us, like me, live in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Tonga, and many other international countries. Regardless of your faults, mistakes, and what you lost, you still continue living fully till the end and taught me and all of us you knew and love you to always be kind and honest. Ofalahiat, Grandpa. Rest peacefully and joyfully in the God's arm until we meet again. Thank you, Hola Luisa, for arranging for these family Zoom meetings, especially for inviting me to speak on the behalf of Hako. Erisila-san, Tupotania Matale Fanua. Malo Alpito of Alahia to you all for attending and listening. Love you all. Ate Sakamontol Koto Mafanki for Fonga Koto Pe Hako Mataele Ahon. Thank you.
Any questions, Mama?
Now you can ask questions.
Thank you everyone for bearing with us. I know it was long, but if you have any questions, please go ahead.
Ai mate Mataele he ta'u whe Pauline.
Nai mata Mataele ko henia wiena toki ilo pehe taivani mafitu. I think it was June. Taivani mafitu.
Iwa.
Pena na tama e fae ko ingat mantu I na tama e fae na alwa pi hau mi ha pai ko si hau ke na fe ilo ko talanko ko bakai. Okay ke ne ilo he had no idea who my mother was. But talahak te Pauline na ke hau me New Zealand if you know. Tama e fae patani yo. But she told me it was 1957. Ko si henia.
Aia ko ta'u walu ya o ko ke manatu te Mataele. I still remember.
Go ahead, Alfie.
Pahiva.
I remember how KCE. everyone go pretty baby. Hawaii. I think I had a photo of you. I had a photo of you and your mom when you were small.
Okay, mana tu I pea wa Mataele. Fa alu atu o fotutu o mai pea Mataele ko vai.
Kasi taimi fokia po, ko taimi anak mo fanong kaya nga tala noa. You know, I anga ta mo. We have it all one day and then hey. Kakoy kaya nga mo we forgive. Kakoy tamay ko e beauty. Daga ke toi loto ia ke ha ko ke toi flanga Apele Koula. I don't blame him.
I have a question. Oh.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
My question, Paulina, is your siblings. We know you. I haven't met any of your siblings. Are they alive? Are they in New Zealand or here or Tonga? Would love to connect with them.
Oh, na ko to ngai sibling ki hene tai wa no noa. I came before them. But mate to go I only had one sister. There are 4 brothers. Mo to ko taha tangata. Ko to ko tol pen o to now no for Australia to go and 1 here. Kaka mea fogi were so young. Before any question, Isa, Tesa.
Your presentation is wonderful, Pauline. I really appreciate it.
Very much he's quite smart. Aga daw ko tamasi ho tulaan. But I can tell he's very brilliant. Ako pata ko lalo ko nagawa. Kapag daw ko po kamaho tulaan and I think I'm not sure if he lives there or Australia. So malo nagawa.
Mahal ko taha kehe. Jika taha ye. We a bit hanging come out all year go drop out. Oh, now I think it was my brother that went to let's see, Golden Bunny. The brother went to a church college Ilaie. And to
Sione.
Yeah.
Sione Mowilo. They were there when I was there.
Manatui atu go atu go atu na atu frahera ya atu.
Sione.
Iyo. Ni dai.
Tanawang toko pe ko Johnny pe mo ember na nawang pamaha umawaya ki ni oku fano to fire wilo kitam CCC. But John
atu. If I can say it because he could family kita to. Hey, we get away ke aro atu. Ikai ki mua ya. That your dad was here. Talangia, aro ave Uncle Ham, ko api at koloto ko api, you know, ke ani kimbeakai talamai. Iyo. Go pat. The kapa we ha meakai. As long as you get him, ke aro atu ko api. Iyo. Oh, vale pego. You know, John's a bit scary. Ko feto bi ai koe ke aro atu. Ko tame mana e fehala ki anga koe
arrangement.
Ka kong tātu ya an Auntie May. Tala mai Auntie May, or that you have a big thing in Hawaii. Kai ka o te worry. Te tat ka koe pe ko te isa koe a mawhireo. And did Auntie May ring you? Oh, anyway, when he came back, ko pehat nage mandui a ko na tat ka koe. Take your uncle kai ke ki ilo pia ye ofa. Oh, but anyway, make it short. He passed away. Anymore. Si malo atu. Ko hinga tano ako kapau si mahino ke ka whanau. Ai anga se ofani a whangatunga ane mo
Ko ia.
He nau tupo hake.
Auntie Pauline, I have a question.
Yeah,
It's me, Tangi.
yeah, I can see.
Auntie Pauline, so is Pauline CE, Tony's daughter, is she named after you?
No, I think she's named after our grandma again.
Oh, grandma?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because
You're the only Pauline I know.
Tangi, my mom is named after Pauline Mongaloa.
Yeah, so you mentioned also Mongaloa. Auntie Irene married a Mongaloa. Are they kissing cousins too?
Yeah.
I love the kissing cousins, yeah. That's why I married a Samoan.
Tangi, yeah, just stop there, Tangi. Okay, lo if I shouldn't say this. Mali, the second cousin moya. When it comes to us commoner, because we don't like it. Hey.
My parents are third, and so is Manu Nafa.
Exactly. My parents too. My parents too. Which I like that. Ko tau konga eki le mai au tau pehea, yeah? I love how organized you are. I love everything that you talked about. I kind of fell asleep, but it's okay. I don't know too much about you, Auntie, but
yeah, I know.
But I love this because now I know everything about you and how mischievous you were with Auntie Lovely. I know a lot about Auntie Lovely, but I don't know too much about you, which I can see you were her little right-hand sidekick, huh?
And she was the princess and we were the minions. The minions.
But Auntie, I love how you lived in the home that we wanted to live in. You lived there and you saw Grandpa. And that's something that I treasure now that through your eyes, I was able to see that. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I thought that sometime because you hear a lot of some Mataele, they said, oh yeah, we know our grandfather was a businessman and he was that. But that's why I want to tell more things in detail,
Right.
Not to just say, oh, Gamaupui na businessimo, but that's about a businessman of the century without knowing a little bit more, eh?
Right, but interesting how you mentioned Uncle Tuilatai said when he was in Parliament that that Grandpa was trying to legalize prostitution there just to for women to make a living. If that's true, I mean, I can really understand his mind just being about business. That part of it, yeah. Wow, that's powerful. Thank you, Auntie. Thank you.
Thanks to you people for wanting to listen to my what shall I say?
Your memoirs.
My memoirs.
You know, to tell you the truth, family, our history is so powerful and so interesting that I want to invite all my friends in here. I really do. But but I'm sorry, it's just you know what I mean? I want to share it. but I share it. I share our stories.
Yeah, why not?
Say it loud, say it proud.
That's
I'm
right.
so
That's right.
thankful. I'm so thankful to my kids. They help me, as you know, doing things and helping me, correcting some of the words that I said wrong in English.
Auntie, I feel
Yeah.
bad now because Joe and I, my husband and I, come to New Zealand quite often, and we go and visit Uncle. Oh my goodness.
Danny, can I interrupt? Remember, you came and I messaged and said that I love to see you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then I got a shock when I saw your post that you were just at our backyard, you know, in Avondale.
Yeah.
Hey.
That's okay.
My
Next
mom's
time.
But
lives there.
next time you come,
Yeah, it'd be nice.
love to see you. I only
We
saw you
will.
kids when you were very small, when you were
Oh,
here. Yeah.
thank you, Auntie. Thank you
And
so much.
love my cousin, your father. Such a humble man.
Yeah,
So humble.
we spend more time with Charles, with Uncle Charles there.
Yeah, Charles told me. But he lives in Mangreen, closer to the airport. Yeah.
Right. And I keep missing Auntie Beauty. I don't see Auntie Beauty much there. I think when we're there, she's probably in